The gentleman from New York, Mr. Torres, is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. In January 2022, Fed Chair Jerome Powell said, quote, "Capital and liquidity levels at our largest, most systemically important banks are at multi-decade highs." In June of 2023, Fed Chair Powell described the banking system as, quote, "very strongly capitalized." In June of 2023, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said, quote, "Our banking system is well capitalized. There is adequate capital and liquidity in America's banking system." Dr. Gibson, do you agree with those statements from the Fed Chair and the Treasury Secretary?
Yes.
And so the Fed Chair's repeated reassurances about a well-capitalized banking system seems to flatly contradict Basel III's assumption of an undercapitalized banking system. What do you make of that contradiction?
The main objective of the Basel III in-game proposal was to make capital requirements more risk-sensitive and more consistent and adequately reflect risk. That's the goal.
Do you think the banking system is undercapitalized or sufficiently capitalized?
That's one of the things we're looking at through the comment period, so we've gotten a lot of comments about that, and we're going to evaluate that.
Because Fed Chair Powell described it as very strongly capitalized, so the rhetoric from the Fed historically would seem to suggest that it's sufficiently capitalized. You know, I ask myself, given the well-capitalized state of the banking system, you know, are we fixing what ain't broken? You know, what is the actual need for Basel III? A common refrain that I've heard about Basel III is that the United States must conform to European standards of banking. And I'm wondering, where did we get this notion that the United States, as the financial superpower of the world, must conform to European standards of banking? As a US policymaker, the most important question for me is not whether the US banking system is acting in conformity with Europe's banking system. The most important question is whether the US banking system is achieving the best possible balance between economic growth and financial stability. Like that should be the question that matters to all of you. And so do you believe, as I do, that the end goal should not be the Europeanization of the US financial system? The end goal should be the optimization of economic growth and financial stability?
So our goal is a strong US banking system to support a strong US economy.
Do you agree that the goal should be the optimization of economic growth and financial stability?
Yes.
Okay. And have you conducted a study aimed at determining the level of capital requirements that would produce the optimal amount of economic growth and financial stability?
So the notice of proposed rulemaking last year included that information, and we've received a lot of comment about that, and we're evaluating those.
So have you conducted a study?
There were studies cited in the notice of proposed rulemaking.
But has the Federal Reserve itself conducted a study to determine what level of capital requirements would produce the optimal amount of economic growth and financial stability? It's a simple yes or no question.
Yes, and it was cited in the
Okay, you did conduct a study.
It's in the proposal.
Okay. There are those who insist that Basel III capital requirements would have no impact on access to credit. You know, the laws of economics tell us that there's no such thing as a free lunch, right? Nothing is free, everything has a cost. I mean, do you believe that Basel III is an exception to the laws of economics, that Basel III is somehow a free lunch that would have no impact on the availability of credit?
There's definitely costs and benefits.
So it would have an impact on the availability of credit. You know, there are housing finance agencies that have expressed concerns about the impact of Basel III on the low-income housing tax credit equity investments, 85% of which come from the banking system. There are housing organizations that have expressed concerns about the impact of Basel III on minority borrowers and LMI borrowers who disproportionately access mortgages with lower down payments and higher loan-to-value ratios. I mean, do you acknowledge that those are genuine trade-offs?
Yes, and we've gotten a lot of comment on exactly those issues, and we're definitely going to carefully consider those as we work on the final rule.
And you agree that an act of Congress supersedes Basel III recommendation. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
So if there were a conflict between a congressional statute and a Basel III recommendation, the congressional statute should prevail.
I mean,
because there have been concerns that there's a conflict between Basel III's requirement for standardization and Congress's requirement for regulatory tailoring.
I mean, everything we would, any proposal we make would be evaluated by our lawyers to make sure it's consistent with the statutory
I
responsibilities.
see my time has expired, so.